The scarier parts are when you're thinking about something that's to come. Because I knew that if I stopped or if I turned around, it was over. So I had to keep going, but I couldn't go any faster.
Welcome to the Healthy You podcast from NorthShore University HealthSystem, where we explore trending topics in healthcare. I'm Carolyn Starks.
And I'm Jon Hillenbrand.
You know, I'm flustered because we have such a special guest today that I've been fangirling. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's cool.
Today with us we have Art Muir, who is the oldest American to summit Mount Everest at age 75.
Welcome.
Well, it's great to be here. Thanks, Carolyn. Thanks, Jon. It's a privilege to be here. Share the story, perhaps.
Thank you. So, because we know also you're a North Shore patient, so which is why we wanted to have you here. And this story is remarkable, but health is at the center of it, mental health and physical health.
Yeah.
So, what is your message for a 75-year-old that can accomplish something like this?
You do something like this and you come back and you have these experiences and you think about it and you think about what's important and kind of what sticks with you. And of course, the trip itself was, remarkable. But the real message that I come away with and I want to share with people is that, I'm 75. I'm an ordinary, I think of myself as an ordinary person. And now I've had the chance to do this extraordinary event. And actually, I've had the chance to do a lot of extraordinary events. But really, the key is as an ordinary person. I wasn't a college athlete. I wasn't some kind of, former superstar. I've worked with a lot of people and been around a lot of people who are outstanding athletes, college, professional, Olympic, not just in, regular sports, but also in mountaineering. But that's not who I am. But the point of this is what I've learned is that even at my age, if you can avoid the big problems, heart disease, cancer, dementia, diabetes, all those things that we all struggle with, and do the right kind of exercise, your body will still respond to the right stimulation. Really, we were designed to live for, 25 or 30 years? Mm-hmm. And our teeth would wear out. We wouldn't be able to eat. We'd die of starvation, typically, if it weren't some accident before then. But here we are, much older than that. I'm a baby boomer. I was born 1946 on January 9th, so I'm right at the beginning of that curve. And so there are 70 million Americans behind me. And the point of this is, if you're lucky enough to avoid those big catastrophes, health disasters, and you do the right kind of exercise, you can still do extraordinary things. And you can do those as seniors. Mm-hmm. And you can get out, you can do these things, your body will still respond, it'll still carry you through these activities. And it doesn't have to be mountain climbing, it can be a whole bunch of things.
So take us back. I don't know, were you a marathoner? Were you a weightlifter?
That's on my list of things I have to do. I don't know if that'll ever get done. That's on my list. Okay. No, I've not done that. I grew up in Colorado. I actually did a little bit of hiking and climbing and, activities like that, but not a lot. I didn't do any rock climbing. This was just kind of hiking and camping in the mountains. But I've always, the mountains have always had a certain appeal to me. Mm-hmm. Read a bunch of books when I was growing up, and my dad had given me a copy of Maurice Herzog's book called Annapurna. Mm-hmm. Fabulous book about the first climb of the first 8,000-meter peak.
Is Annapurna a mountain?
Yeah, it's one of the 8,000-meter peaks.
Okay.
And of the 14, it's actually the most dangerous out of all of the 14. There's the highest, there's the hardest, K2's the hardest, Everest is the highest, and Annapurna is the most dangerous. But anyway, these guys climbed it in 1950, and
wow.
Herzog wrote this book in 1953. My dad gave it to me probably to read in 1958. I still have the book. It's just that right age. I was probably 12. That age where you kind of get
captivated.
You get dreams. You kind of things get inside you that don't get out again. I realized that I could actually apply for this and try it. It was so stunning to me that there are actually expeditions that bring regular people, not professionals, to climb this mountain. I signed up without a lot of trepidation. This time I had actually talked to the owner of the company, Garrett Madison, the leader of this expedition, and it's his company. A very fine reputation. And I also know from other people who had worked with him on Everest what a good operation he runs. And they also had sent some information to him about me, about, what they thought I was capable of doing. Because, I sent this letter to him, and we ended up talking, but I sent a letter to him. Basically, it was kind of like, here's what I've done. Is this like going to be okay?
Oh, so do you have to get like approved?
Well, I didn't know. I didn't know, but I wanted to find out. So I was sitting there. I was a little nervous about that, because at that time I was 72. I would have been 73 during that climb in 2019. And I could certainly see him turning around saying, we just don't think this is going to work. I mean, I don't know what the criteria would be, but fortunately I had some people write on my behalf to him, so he accepted it. And then I have coaching. I've been working really hard, trying to get ready physically because it takes a lot of time. And I'd been working for years with really outstanding trainers who were primarily geared toward athletes who played football, baseball, basketball, mostly football. And they were great. I mean, these guys they know what they're doing. But the difference is that mountaineering and what I was doing required a different kind of endurance and different kind of training. You have to be able to sustain yourself over a long period of time and carry a load yourself or what you're carrying, as opposed to somebody like football where you have these amazing energetic bursts of energy, powerful, and then kind of a rest, and then more power, and then rest and power. So it's this intermittent thing.
Right.
Did they know you had the 2 meniscus tears in your knees and 2 rotator cuff tears? And then the other thing is, what about just old age and agility?
Yeah. No,
those are agility and balance.
What happened was doing the other program, which was really geared for athletes in sports programs like football. Let's think about football, okay? I kept getting hurt. I mean, things would happen. I would do things and either muscles or tear things or something. It wasn't like these issues that I had. We should talk about, because I want to talk about the North Shore. Well, the people that kept me going, because there's a lot of them, and I owe them a lot. It was too hard on my body because of the forces involved. I think you have to be really careful as you get older about how you train. So, to cut to the chase, what happened is I found some coaches out in the state of Washington at a group called Uphill Athlete who specialize in this. There are 2 guys, Scott Johnson, who's been a 35-year coach of mountaineering and cross-country ski racing and things like that. Endurance athletes at altitude. Okay, that's what he basically trains. And then was Steve House, an internationally known, outstanding, real climber. I mean, a big-time guy. They wrote a book because they wanted to share it with people that they knew, because they thought their training methodology was better and different. It was developed what they call muscular endurance and this aerobic capacity to do something for a long period of time. So as we sit here, just a quick example is our heart rate. There are 5 zones. This is like we're in heart rate zone 1. When you're completely exhausted and your heart's about to burst, that's heart rate zone 5. Most of what athletes do is they move up into 3 and 4 really quickly and then back down, then up to 4 and then back down. Mm-hmm. But what you want for mountaineering is 2, zone 2.
Just consistently.
For a long time.
You've seen people running around jogging who are talking to each other, they're just chatting, and that's zone 2, where you can maintain a conversation, not like we're doing, but you can do it without gasping and running out of air.
Right.
So the methodology spends a lot of time training it. So I spent a lot of time. And because of COVID, there are a lot of restrictions. We had an old Nordic track. Now, everybody's got one of these probably in their grandparents' house.
Right.
The old wooden Nordic tracks,
right. Mm-hmm. It's like a cross-country ski exercise implement thing. Yeah.
I spent a lot of time on one of those. Watching the old digital, kilometer, counting thing turn over. I mean, a lot of hours on that. I mean, I did a lot of heavier stuff, and then eventually barbells and other kinds of work. And some of it was at an easy zone, like a 120 heart rate, which is my zone 2. Mm-hmm. Some of it, though, was high-intensity intervals where people really push it up, and I can push my heart rate up pretty easily into the mid-150s, which for somebody my age is, pretty high. Pat Logan, who's my primary guy, he wouldn't sign off on the healthcare certificate until I took a stress test here. So I came over to the hospital at Glenbrook, and they hooked me up, and I started doing this. And I think there's like 10 levels. And I got to like level 8, and they're watching me, and he said, that's enough. I said, no, you can't. I know, we're not done yet. He said, yeah, we're done. Because they had other people waiting. I wanted to see how far I could go with this thing. So I really knew that the training was working really well.
That's great.
And your relationship with the doctors here is pretty incredible.
Well, it's been great because, like everybody my age, I have issues, but I have issues that can be treated and fixed. That's what's so remarkable. Mark Bowen, for instance, an orthopedic surgeon, has done 3 or 4 arthroscopic procedures on my knees. One of them was done right before Shishapangma, and that was like a right after Shishapangma. That was a home run. That actually made a huge difference. And then I went back to him because I was still having trouble with one of my knees, and I have both a lateral and a medial tear currently in the meniscus. So we had to talk about what to do because I wasn't going to get more arthroscopic surgery before this, but I also wasn't going to not go on this trip
because of the recovery, right?
Yeah. You just can't train, and you can't take off that kind of time with training. I mean, I've been training. We can talk about it for like 3 years, but intensely for 2 years before this trip.
Wow.
And we ended up with a cortisone shot.
Yeah.
And I had no issues with my knee. I still haven't had any issues. I mean, knock on wood here. Where's the wood? Yeah. Knock on wood. So that's been great. He also did 2 rotator cuff surgeries for me.
And those were like 10 years ago, right?
Yeah. Well, the first one was. And what had happened is I had a ski thing, and I basically crashed, and I ended up losing all the sensitivity in my arm because the nerve got crushed, and so we had to recover from that. And then there's a tear, so we did a rotator cuff, but it was pretty much a normal rotator cuff. That was on my left shoulder, I guess. And but it was a normal. It took a year. I thought it would take less, but it took a year, and it was fine. But the last time, I had postponed it in 2019, and then I came back to see Mark because he knew there was an issue. And I won't get too technical, but the supraspinatus is what lifts your humerus. That's basically the small muscle and tendon on the top of your shoulder. Mm-hmm. Well, mine wasn't there anymore. Okay, when he went in there, he said that was not good. Okay, there was there was a hole there, and it's supposed to be a tendon and a muscle. He had to do this really pretty sophisticated procedure at that point. He could have just closed it back up and said you need a new shoulder.
Right.
But he didn't do that. Partly because he knew I was planning on trying to do a lot
Everest?
more stuff. Yeah. He knows I'm a little crazy.
Well, we're going to have him on here.
he's so great. I mean, these docs have all been great. But Mark knew that I wanted to recuperate and rehab the shoulder, so he actually did a procedure where they pulled part of the muscle and the tendon of the infraspinatus from your shoulder blade around, and it took a long time to rehab that. I mean, I did physical therapy, but then at home during COVID, it was perfect because what else is there to do when you're retired and you got a bad shoulder? You just rehab it. So for 1.5 hours a day, 3 days a week, for 15 months, I worked on the rehab of that.
Wow!
And by the time I was going to Everest, I could do pull-ups and chin-ups and push-ups and stuff. I mean, it was amazing, actually.
That's great. You're going to Everest, as an outsider here.
Yeah.
Explain to us the importance of your shoulders, because you're not rappelling, are you?
Yeah.
Or you are?
You do. Yeah, you do a fair amount of rappelling. As you get better and better, you actually use arm wraps, so it's like kind of a different way of getting down, so it doesn't take quite as long as rappelling. But yeah, you have ice cliffs that you're going down and through the Khumbu ice fall and stuff. So you need it for that. But the thing you really need it for is just general balance and kind of protection, and you're putting packs on and doing all kinds of stuff, so you have to have some strength. But the thing where you really need it is Everest is a fixed line climb almost from base camp, almost all the way to the top. There are very few places, but there are some where there are no ropes. So you have this thing called Jumar, or an ascender, which is a one-way handle you put on a rope. And you can slide it up, but it won't slide back. Mm-hmm. The idea is it protects you once you've taken a step up from falling backwards or off the mountain. So what you're doing is you're working that thing all the time. I mean, I don't know, thousands of times you're shoving this thing up the rope.
Right.
And sometimes it's left-handed, sometimes it's right-handed. But you're doing it all the time to stay attached to the rope. So that's a shoulder movement. And if your shoulder and your arms stuff aren't strong, you just can't do it. And there's a lot of other stuff, but you can't do it without an effective shoulder. I mean, you can't climb.
I'm guessing your hardest day must have been in the ice falls. And what are those?
Oh, yeah.
And why is it like right away? Can it be like a Camp 4? Or?
Yeah, you'd think you'd have some warm up for it.
Right.
Well, first of all, you come into the Khumbu Valley, which leads to Everest on the south side,
Is that base camp?
Not just the valley that leads up to there's a river that drains off the mountain, and you basically are coming up this valley. So you can't come up too fast because you have to acclimatize, otherwise you get sick. And you can actually have cerebral edema, pulmonary edema, and other kinds of bad effects from altitude. In fact, the fifth person to die on it from the Everest expedition this year just died June 3rd. They took him off the mountain, but he died from a cerebral edema that he incurred on the mountain, and he just never recovered. So, it's the altitude thing's a really serious thing. So what you do is you start out lower, you fly into a place called Lukla, and then you trek up this valley.
To base camp.
To base camp. It takes about 7 or 8 days. And
it's really far, right?
It
looks really far on the map.
It's 30. Maybe it's 30 some miles. I can't remember exactly. It takes about 7 or 8 days because you're trying to go about 1,000 feet per day roughly. So I think Lukla is something like 9 or 10,000 and base camp 17.
Mm-hmm.
And it gives your body a chance to acclimate. You spend a couple places. You spend 2 nights, and you go up. Coming out, for instance, just walking, even though it's not all downhill, by the way, it's for down valley. You walk up a lot of steps. I couldn't believe it. Up a river, down, over the mountain, down to the river, up a mountain, down. It's
so amazing. What's that saying? Climbing down the mountain. You're still climbing the mountain.
It's surprisingly hard, but it's a wonderful thing to do. It takes 3 days to come out, about 7 or 8 to go up. But then once you're at base camp, you're there for a long time, and you're doing a number of things. You're trying to, again, acclimate because you have to go from base camp, which is 17, all the way up to the top of Mount Everest, which is 29,000 feet. So it's 12,000 more feet, even though you're starting off pretty high.
Wow.
And you do that in a succession of rotations. So first of all, we took a bunch of practice hikes in the area, just to stay strong and get acclimated. We also go into the ice fall, which is where the snow
For
coming.
practice?
Well, yeah, but not deeply into it. But this is right outside the base camp where there's still a bunch of these things called they're called penitentes, which are like ice towers, and you can practice on that. The guide's showing people who haven't had a lot of practice how to rappel, how to climb up the things, how to climb over, how to transfer from rope to rope. Just a whole bunch of techniques so you're comfortable working on this ice because it looks very inviting. It looks like styrofoam almost. Like styrofoam's like cutouts.
Oh, yeah.
And you get on this thing, and this ice is really brittle because it's thousands of years old. So what it is, it's the snow that's come down from Everest and Lhotse and Nuptse, which are the 3 big mountains, into a valley. And then it slowly compresses and changes into ice. And slowly it's pushed down, gravity and the force of more snow pushes it down the valley where it kind of tumbles in this frozen river called the ice fall, and then until it gets low enough that it actually melts. And this part actually moves about 3 to 4 feet per day.
That's a lot.
Well, it's a lot, even though the ice is really old, but it's moving. It's a lot, and it changes. It's just amazing how it changes. And they have this group of very specialized Sherpas who go in. They're called the Icefall Doctors, and they maintain the route. They put it in every year, have to put a brand new one in because it's all different.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And then they go in every night. These guys get up every night and go up there, check the route, and then, when things have collapsed, and things do collapse. So an example is one of the women on our Koki Bereni, who's from Connecticut, was climbing, and she's with her Sherpa, and she's going across a ladder. There weren't many ladders this year. Like in 2019, there were a whole bunch of ladders. This year, there weren't just because of the configuration.
I'm sorry, do ladders go over something or to get up
very
something?
Good. They do both. Yeah, very good. They go across open areas called crevasses, big cracks in the ice, where you fall down and don't come back. Okay, not good. Okay, so that's bad. And they also use them as vertical sections, to climb vertical sections sometimes for different reasons. So, but this year we just didn't have very many. 2019 there were a lot. I don't know. Maybe they had excess ladders. I don't know. I don't know exactly why. But Koki was there, and there was a horizontal ladder and 2 vertical towers of ice called seracs. One was attached to the ladder and crossed the crevasse, and the other one was kind of a companion. They were just like 2 of them, like 2 sentinels sitting there. And I don't know. They're like, say they're 10 feet wide, but they're like 20 feet high. So big blocks of ice. And the ladder just happens to be anchored to one of them. That's where the trail went. She's looking at these 2, and all of a sudden, one of them just disappears, just drops straight down. without a sound. Just get swallowed by the ice fall.
Wow.
Meanwhile, her Sherpa, who's on the ladder, on the other one, these Sherpas, they're not upset by very many things. This was not good. Okay. This thing just disappeared.
Wow.
So it moves and changes in very unpredictable ways. And so it's very dangerous. You know, in 2014, 16 Sherpas were killed. They were all standing together at one point in the ice fall. That was the end. They canceled the season, of course. The next year was the ice fall from the earthquakes, but this was just the whole thing just collapsed, killed 16 Sherpas. I mean, so, you know, you go through that and you...
How many days or hours are you going through that?
Yeah.
It's called the Khumbu, you said?
The Khumbu.
Khumbu.
Yeah, Khumbu, Khumbu. That's just the name of the valley, but it's called the ice fall. It normally takes about 6 hours to climb through it. This year it took us about 9. Now, we got a little bit better because it's a more circuitous route. You're in there for a long time because you're going from about 17 to it's probably about 1,200 feet high, something like that. But it's just this jumbo block of ice. And when we do different rotations. So the first time we go up the mountain, we go up to Camp 1, which is right above the ice fall. We spend a couple nights. Then we go to Camp 2, spend a couple nights, and come all the way back to base camp and rest.
What?
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. So you go through this. So now we've gone through the ice fall twice.
Wait, why? Just to practice?
It's for acclimatization. Just because you need that time on the mountain. You want to go up high and then sleep low. That's been the most effective formula they found over the years. Otherwise, you get these bruising headaches, you lose your appetite, you get sick, you know, and then you can get this high altitude pulmonary edema.
So what's your anxiety level like before the Khumbu ice falls?
Depends on how much experience you've had. If you haven't had a lot of...
Well, you personally.
Yeah, I hadn't had a lot of experience, so my anxiety level was very low, okay?
Oh, I see.
But
Didn't know what you were expecting.
It started
What to
going up.
expect.
It started going up as I got smarter, as I got more experience. And the smarter you get, the more anxiety you have.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
And so that's the first rotation. You have to do this 3 times. The second time, you go up to Camp 1, Camp 2, and then you touch Camp 3, which is about 23,000 feet. Mm-hmm. Come back down, stay at 2 for a while, and come back down. So you have to go through the ice fall now. That's 4 times. So you've gone through it up twice, down twice. And then the third time, you basically are doing your summit rotation. You're coming all the way down. And by the time I had done my second rotation, I had a full appreciation for the danger of the ice fall. And the mountain, because I'd seen what they call the Lhotse face, which is above the ice fall. It's very steep, and we touched a place called Camp 3, which is a place I do not want to go back to. I mean, it's just scary. It's pitched on the side of a very, very steep slope. You know, the tents are kind of cut into platforms in the snow and the ice. It's very precarious.
Wow, real steep.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing where you have a rope right outside your tent, because if you didn't, you know, you'd come out, take a false step, and you're 5,000 feet in the wrong direction. You don't want to do that.
Is the tent, so to speak, hanging off the side of a mountain?
Sure felt like it to me, I'll tell you. It's so steep, they actually they cut a horizontal platform, but it's you know, it's the Lhotse face can be 45 to, I think some places it may be 50, and even a little bit steeper in some places, but about 45 to 50 degrees. So that doesn't sound too bad until you're actually, it's not on a ladder, but on a slope, you know, and you realize how steep it is. It's really, really steep and feels very precarious. Yeah, it was not fun. Camp 3 was scary, but it wasn't.
Did you want to go up or down?
Anywhere else, okay?
Yeah. And is this snow and ice where you are, up at Camp 3? Or is it okay? Yeah,
you know, you get up higher and the wind scours some of the snow off, and you get to some rock. Mm-hmm. But the interesting thing is that you actually want the snow on the mountain because it's so icy underneath it, and it's just this very steep thing. So climbing on that ice is really hard. Now, the good news is the Sherpas, who basically make all this possible, have been up there before fixing lines and doing things. They put new lines in every single year. Mm-hmm. But they're stepping in the same spots every time, and they're creating these kind of boot steps, so these places for you to put your feet. And when the snow comes, it makes it easier because it actually gives you a platform to step on. Otherwise, you got this ice at this odd steep angle, and it really is hard to walk on.
were wondering if you could describe your most difficult day.
Sure. I want to answer that question, but I will tell you why Camp 3 was so scary. Because we do a third rotation to actually climb the mountain. And when we were there for our third rotation, the weather this year was really tricky because there were 2 tropical storms, 2 cyclones that came in just at the time we're supposed to be summiting, which is like the third week in May. And so even when we had extra time, normally you spend about 6 days at Camp 2 or above on your summit rotation. We were there for 10, which is a long time to be above the ice fall, just because of the weather. So when we were stuck at Camp 2, and Camp 3 we also got stuck with bad weather, a lot of wind, a lot of blowing snow. And I woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning, and the wind was just howling, and the vestibule in the tent, that empty area where you climb into the tent, we're in the inner part of the tent, my tent mate and I, is filling up with snow. I mean, the snow is just coming in, and you can't like push it out with your hand. It's solid like concrete. It's just,
wow.
And I'm thinking, this is not good, okay, filling up the vestibule, because that's our exit. So I put some stuff bags there to try and stop that. And I looked over, and my tent mate is lying there sleeping, because this guy can sleep through anything. It's so annoying. It's just, he just puts on his little sleeping thing, and he's out. 6 hours, fine. 12 hours, fine. 14 hours, sleeps for 14 hours.
Really?
It's just incredible.
Amazing.
I give him as much grief as I can, but it didn't keep him awake. Anyway, the tent has filled up with snow on the upper part, and it's completely come down on top of him. So I'm looking at him. I have to wake him up because I think he's going to suffocate because the snow is collapsed on top of him. Meanwhile, because we're on this slope, he's on the upper portion. I'm on the down below me. The snow has scoured away all of the support underneath the bottom of the tent. So there's this we're in the tent, but it's like a 2-foot drop off. So now I'm picturing us just like the whole tent just tumbling off of the mountain because I don't know what's
Right.
I don't even want to go. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. At that point, you're kind of stuck in there. You have to kind of like deal with it. The scarier parts are when you're thinking about something that's to come, and I've moved as I become more aware of the mountain and the power of it and the danger from nervous. Okay, I started out being a little nervous to being anxious. Okay, to the anxiety, to a point where I think on Camp 4 when we actually got up and we're getting ready to climb Camp 4, I actually said to my tent mate, I'm really uncomfortable. I'm kind of scared of what's coming up here because I realized at that point this mountain is big and it's dangerous and a lot of things could happen. We already had, I think at that time we had 4 deaths on the mountain, so we knew that 4 people had already died during that climb. So you have a full appreciation of the danger. And it's somewhere between, it's scared is it's probably the right term. Saying anxious is not enough of a term. It's somewhere in between that. But that was hard because I didn't know exactly, what was coming, but I knew it was going to be really hard. But the hardest day was not the summit day, surprisingly to me. The hardest day was on the summit rotation. We had to walk from base camp all the way, hike through the ice fall, go to Camp 1, then keep going all the way to Camp 2. And I just ran out of gas, like at Camp 1. And then I had to go all the way to Camp 2, and I was just wiped. I don't know exactly what it was. And that was I had to dig really deep for that. That was really a hard one. And my poor Sherpa who was with me, he's waiting for me. That was a 13-hour day of climbing. And that's a really long time.
And what are your steps like in terms of how slow? It's
so funny you would actually ask me that question because it's exactly the right question. Normally, when you're working through the ice fall, you're doing kinds of things. You're climbing up, you're climbing ropes, you're going down. You have to go up and down all around. But on that one, you get past a series of crevasses, which you mostly go back and forth around the ends of them. And then you have a very long open snowfield. It's not very steep. Actually, most people would walk this at about a normal slow walk. Mm-hmm. That's basically what most people do. And it goes from 19,000 feet to about 21,000 feet. So it's pretty high, but normally that wouldn't be very daunting. I had to use what's called a rest step, a mountaineer step. That's where you take a step, and every time you step, you just kind of stop for a moment and rest. Every single step for like thousands of steps across this snowfield.
Wow.
And so it took me, much longer than it normally would. Because I knew that if I stopped or if I turned around, it was over. So I had to keep going, but I couldn't go any faster than that. And then I got to Camp 2. We rested for a couple of days. I got, some food. My appetite was pretty good. I drank a lot of water. And it was fine. I mean, I was fine. It's part of climbing is this thing you go through where some days are good days and some days are bad, and you talk to anybody, and everybody has those. It's surprising. You'd think you'd get, just to be constant, but it's not like that. And so that was my hardest day. Summit day was tough, but this was actually harder. I had to actually focus on making every step and actually taking the step. My mantra was no mistakes. I told my family I was coming home. I wasn't going to die on Mount Everest. So what I did very deliberately, because I didn't know what to expect physically or mentally, but I knew that mentally I'd been there before. I'd made some mistakes in 2019. I'd fallen off a ladder, it hurt my ankles, and then I had to come home, didn't get very high. So I knew that the mental focus was really important. So what I said was, starting from the time I got off the airplane in Lukla, going up the valley, on all the rotations, all the climbs we did, no mistakes. So I tried to sounds crazy, but every time I put my foot down, which was hundreds of thousands of times, over the course of these 2 months, every single time I tried to place my foot exactly right, exactly where I wanted it, and not make a mistake, not slip, not fall, not bang a knee. And it worked. I mean, I was still doing that. I was grinding away. And part of the reason that I don't have a great summit story, like how exhilarating it was, because I was working so hard on that, that I was just putting the ground underneath me, and the ground was going by, and pretty soon I was on top, and it was like, okay, well, that was cool. Okay.
Kind of anticlimactic.
Well, it wasn't because I had my moment actually before that. But it just illustrates, because I saw that picture that everybody knows. I came over the South Summit where the iconic view of the summit ridge is. The picture you've seen where everybody's all stacked up, and I'm coming up, the sun is up by then, so you're feeling really good because you climbed. We started at 10 o'clock at night, and I got to the summit at 8 o'clock in the morning. And you're feeling pretty good, though. This is about 6 o'clock in the morning. The sun is up. Over the South Summit, I see that ridge, and I think, holy smokes, I'm actually going to climb Mount Everest. I mean, it was, and I'm kind of by myself, but we're kind of, my Sherpas are there. It wasn't too crowded. There were people there, but it wasn't like we weren't waiting. Everybody's kind of moving along at a good pace. And then it was back to work, because that ridge, if you remember, is, it's cornice, and you got to be really careful. And then you get to the Hillary Step, and I'm thinking, holy moly, wow, I just actually climbed over the Hillary Step. I mean, this is something I've known for my whole life,
Is that
So
Hillary
cool.
Step the iconic photo we all see of the line of climbers?
Yeah.
So how wide is that? I can never figure that out.
It's wide enough for one person, but there are two ropes, one going up and one going down. And they don't work because it's so narrow. It's narrow enough that there's really only room for one person.
And it's ice.
It's ice and snow and rock. Okay, it's a combination. And it's really steep. You can't step off the trail. There's no room. You can't go up because it's so steep, and you can't step off it because it's 6,000 feet straight down, basically.
So if someone fell, would they bring everybody down with them?
I actually hope that never happens. Those ropes are really strong, but if a number of people fell, they only hold so much. Could there be a huge accident because a bunch of people fell? It's possible, I guess. But what actually happens is you have to pass each other, and sometimes it gets really crowded, but we had some people coming down, and you have this process where you're on a rope and you're clipped to it. You have safety lines, and you have to unclip and then reach around the person and clip back on the line, and then unclip again, and then that, so you can pass each other. You kind of squeeze by each other like a crowded hallway or something, or a very narrow passageway. So it really you can really get stuck there. And going up, it wasn't a problem, but coming down, actually, there was a big traffic jam there. And I was actually just coming across that Hillary Step, and we were there. I had to wait for 40 minutes. And finally, somebody was in kind of the middle of this scrum, because people are coming up, people are coming down, and nobody can move. We're actually just all jammed in this kind of keyhole. And finally, what happened was, fortunately, it was warm, wasn't a lot of wind then. The sun was up, and so it was just about 9 o'clock, I guess, because I'd come down from the summit. And then our guide, Garrett Madison, was actually on the summit ridge. He saw that there was this big cluster of people, because it really wasn't terrible behind him like it was in the pictures you've seen from 2019. So he basically stopped all the traffic. That allowed enough time to pass for the people that were stuck in this keyhole around the Hillary Step. All the people who were coming up who refused to move. Everybody refused to move. It was not pretty. Okay?
And are people like yelling at each other or swearing at each other in multiple languages?
Well, first of all, there are a lot of foreign climbers, but there are a lot of Sherpas. They never yell for any reason. They're amazing, actually. How they just work with what they have. They just don't get angry. They don't get mad. That's just not part of their personality. The other climbers, there are a number of Westerners, but most climbers now are actually from China and India. Those are the two places that attract the biggest number of climbers. So most of us can't understand each other anyway. Okay? So
Right.
you can yell all you want, but you've got oxygen masks on, so there isn't much of that. But finally, a Nepalese guy who was taking photographs for one of the expeditions, finally kind of took charge, stopped the traffic coming up, people coming up, cleared, and then we were able to get down. That cleared the mountain, and then the rest of the people were able to come up. But, you almost never, there were a couple instances, but almost never, in all the things of passing people and taking turns, and people were great. The climbers were great, and the Sherpas are always great.
Right.
And the Sherpas are they're so adept at this that you have these things where we're messing around the lines and we're trying to clip past you. They just unclip and walk around people.
This is my day job.
Yeah.
Get out of the way.
And you just can't believe how talented they are. And some of them only start using oxygen really high up, much higher than we would.
Right.
And on the trails, you see porters carrying a lot of the loads because there are no roads, so things have to come in. They either come in by on the back of somebody or on a yak or by helicopter. They actually have a lot of helicopter service now. And that was actually a good thing this year because they took a lot of people off for COVID and other reasons. But you see some of these fellas on these porters carrying these huge loads, walking these really rugged trails. Sometimes they're rocky, sometimes they're muddy, sometimes they're slippery, wearing flip-flops. And I'm not kidding. I mean, I don't have any idea how they do it. I have no idea. Just trying to imagine. I can't walk out of my shower with flip-flops.
Right.
So I don't know how they do it. They're
amazing.
It's when I use the word incredible in the sense of can't believe how good they are.
Well, how many pounds were you carrying on your back?
Not a lot, actually. We had I weighed all the gear we weigh for Summit, including the pack, plus 1 tank of oxygen, the water and food and stuff like that, the down suit, the boots, all that kind of stuff. That total, it's like 40 pounds. All right, so that's all the gear you have. That's goggles and helmet and all this stuff. So you're wearing 40 pounds, but it's distributed around your body. My pack weighed about 12 to 16 maybe. Have 1.5 liters of water, a little bit of food, an oxygen tank, which weighs about 8, I think. I can't remember, 8 or 9. Maybe it's a little bit more. Maybe it's like 15 or 16, but it's not. It's something you don't ever even think about.
I know you said you felt like your body got stronger. It was like a well-oiled machine. The longer and higher you climbed.
Yeah. Did I say that? It's true. That's actually true.
Yeah.
No,
and we attributed it all to Mark Bowen. So.
It's the cortisone.
It's that did happen to me. It's amazing. Although stronger in the sense of how. Here's how I thought about it. I thought about you take a piece of leather and you stick it out in the Arizona sun for a while. You know what happens? Mm-hmm. It kind of gets dry and stringy and tough. I felt like that. Okay, kind of dried out, stringy and tough. And like on the summit climb, I kept monitoring myself to make sure, because who knows? I'm 75. I've never been there before. Maybe it's gonna. It's like Chuck Yeager when he broke the sound barrier. Nobody knew what was going to happen. Was his plane going to blow up? I was kind of waiting to see if I was just going to like keel over or
disintegrate or something. Yeah,
I don't know what was going to happen. But it felt good. It was hard. I mean, I was working, but I wasn't out of control or anything. I wasn't on the edge of exhaustion. And I still don't think on the whole thing that I pushed myself as far as I could have, because people do die doing this. And 2 of them were actually, the bodies were still there on the mountain who had summited and come down and then collapsed and died. I mean, and I don't know how that feels, but I didn't want to feel that. And did I ever tell you what the final outcome of that no mistakes was? So I went all the way up to the summit. I did all those rotations, did all these practice climbs, got all the way there, no mistakes. It's just so boring, but thousands and thousands and thousands of times. And then I was walking down. We got all the way down through the ice fall. They're walking back. We're getting to the camp. There's a trail along the glacier. It was about 50 feet up to the tent. I get up about 45 feet, slip and fall down. It's true.
Really?
It's true. Yeah, but that wasn't. Then I
stopped watching your stuff.
I don't know.
It's humility. Someone's got to humble you.
Yeah,
right?
and I kind of got dirt all over myself, that kind of stuff. But it worked where it counted in the ice fall.
What was more difficult, the physical challenge or the mental toughness you needed?
I think I was better trained for the mental, but that's because of what I did for a career. The physical was harder for me, but here's the reason I was able to do what I think most people would find really difficult to do, and that is to focus on something so mundane, so trivial over and over and over and over again. I mean, I don't know what other people are thinking about. I'm thinking about that step, left foot, right foot. I'm looking where I'm putting them. But, I spent 35 years as a lawyer, as a corporate finance, and being that kind of an attorney, you do a lot of negotiating of documents, transactions, agreements, and stuff like that. My clients are mostly banks making loans. But you have a lot of sessions where you have hour-long sessions negotiating trivial provisions of these documents, trying to get them right to make sure the parties have the right outcome. You go through 18 or 19 or 20 drafts of these documents with trivial changes. You know what the dance is. You've been there already. You know where it's going to go, but you still have to go through all this stuff. That takes a lot of focus and a lot of mental toughness, I think, and attention to detail. And I just did that for many, many years. So I got used to it. Now, most people would find that stultifyingly boring. Okay? I hate to say that.
Well, I wasn't going to say anything, but
but it really works for something like this, a process where you have to apply, yourself physically in a certain way over a long period of time.
But you were on a mountain before where someone died. I mean, how do you keep that demon out of your head?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm able to compartmentalize that, I think. I mean, I'm still... Two of the climbers who died were still tied to ropes attached to basically the trail. You walk right by them. And there are others that are still there from 1996. I'm not sure how long those bodies. Most of them have been removed, or if something else has been covered by the mountain. But it's surprising to me, these climbers there, they're kind of rigor mortis has twisted the bodies a little bit. They're buried in the snow, but they look almost peaceful somehow, like sculptures. But another part of the mountain, you go through an area which is called the memorial it isn't a memorial to fallen climbers, Sherpas and climbers. And that is really powerful. That to me, these stone cairns, with memorials to them. Mm-hmm. And that to me was much more powerful in the sense of it felt like you were in some kind of a very special, almost like kind of that Indian burial ground kind of thing. Like the spirits were still there. It was not so much on the mountain. Maybe that's just because I was working, doing the work. I don't know for sure. So,
and how has this experience changed you? I'm sure you've been asked that before, right? Your view of the world or yourself?
I'm not sure anybody's actually asked me that question. And I'm not sure what the answer is. I mean, I thought at the time that the answer was that I didn't need to do or see or participate in any more big mountain climbing. I felt like this was a complete exposure to big mountain climbing. This was enough, and that, I was kind of done with this. And then, you get home and time goes by. You start thinking about, I haven't really thought about other things.
Short-term memory that you talk about?
Well, I think it's that. And then you kind of realize that, again, like everything, it's a great adventure, but that was then, and now we're, somewhere else. And the one thing I did that was really useful and enjoyable was walking out of the Khumbu, hiking out, because I really wanted to see the valley 2 months later, with the crops are growing in the small gardens and things like that. People are still not there because the shops are all closed. But that gave me a sense of closure and a sense that the last chapter, I'd read the last chapter of the book, I could close the book. So I really feel good about that. I think people should, do that when they climb, and people should do this trek if possible. So I don't know that it's changed me. It took 3 years, so I'm 3 years older, so there's 3 years worth of less stuff I can do. But
Celebrity.
I still want to, it surprises me. I'm surprised by this. Because I do think the story really is, when you're older, you can still do a lot of things. You got to take care of yourself, though, and that means you got to have the right kind of medical care. I mean, you got to have the right people taking care of you. So if you got something wrong with you, get it fixed. I have friends. We all have friends now. Their knees aren't good, and their shoulders aren't working right, and they can't get. So the answer is, go get it fixed. If it, to the extent that you can get it fixed.
Right, because I think the majority might feel like, well, that's what happens when you get older.
I know.
Or they might think like, I could never do that because of my left knee, my trick knee, or whatever.
Right, yeah. But a couple of things. Let me give you an example. One of the other people, one of the long litany of doctors I've used, Bruce Noxon, who's on the NorthShore team as a podiatrist. I had this problem with my foot where I was backcountry skiing, and I get this burning sensation in my foot. I don't know what this is. But it was really, after a while, it was really uncomfortable because it was like pressure increasing over, of course, 2 or 3 hours. And it was really, and I couldn't kind of shake it. It was like this phantom kind of pain. I went to see Bruce Noxon, and he said, yeah, you've got a neuroma. Well, a neuroma is basically in your toe, it's like a nerve that's pinched in one of the joints. Pretty common. You can't, there is surgery you can do for it. But he gave me some pads that basically go in my shoes that help change the angle of the foot sitting there. And it's like, it was not an issue at all, ever, on the entire trip. And I haven't done it for backcountry skiing yet.
Yeah.
And he also did a thing where I said something, I can't remember what it was, something like my leg, and he sent me down to have a scan of they have a name for bone graft or something, whatever, the length of your legs. Mm-hmm. It's not unusual, but my legs are different lengths. Mm-hmm. 4 millimeters. So that's very common, and it has all kinds of implications for how your hips are and how your posture, your back.
Yeah.
So we had some orthotics. It's like, I have no issues there at all. It's
great.
Well, yeah, because I was fortunate enough to get it fixed, and it's easily fixed.
Yeah.
There's so many great procedures, especially at a hospital, system like this. And so if you've got something that needs to get fixed, go get it fixed. And then do the exercise. It's a combination of those things. So you have
to
have
the therapy, right?
Yeah. And I was really good about my when it comes to physical therapy. It's really important.
You are like a doctor's dream patient.
Well,
in one way.
I was thinking, did I put any kids through college at this? Right? I don't know. But no, I've had nothing but great experiences.
Are efforts after climbing Everest less challenging or difficult? Because you have in the back of your mind, like, I climbed Everest, I can do this.
No.
Oh.
No.
Good question.
I think I know how to answer this question. I think I know what you're asking. And people think about, I hear people say things when they climb mountains. They use words like, I conquered the mountain, I dominated that climb, or some words to that effect, basically conquest, like they subdued this pile of rock, which of course doesn't make any sense to me, but I like that. People like that feeling.
Yeah.
And that wasn't that wasn't my experience at all. Okay. My experience was, I just wanted to get above Camp 2. I'd been to Camp 2. I just wanted to get above Camp 2. So anything above that was a home run for me. If I had only gotten to Camp 3, I would have considered my trip a success. I didn't really expect to get to the top. I wanted to get to the top. I didn't expect to. So I went in with my view was, I'll just take what the mountain gives me, what the mountain allows me to have. And for instance, one of the things you do it's a Buddhist country for the most part, and so one of the things, they have a lot of prayer wheels there, and they have prayer flags, and they have stupas, and they have other things, mani stones that are inscribed with Om Mani Padme Hum, and they're basically, and I didn't miss one of those, okay?
Wow,
Not
yeah,
one.
yeah.
All right, I took every one of those because I wanted to make sure. I'm not sure.
Covered.
I want to make sure. Okay, and we had a ceremony, a puja at our base camp. They built an altar, and you walk around that before you leave, and you walk around that to basically show respect for the mountain and for the religion and for the people and for the the spirits of the mountain. I didn't miss any of those either. I tell you, took all of those. So my approach really was much more of a see what the mountain will give me, because you got to have everything in place, and then still be lucky. So I feel very fortunate and respectful toward the mountain. I mean, it's a big, dark, dangerous place, and I just feel really fortunate. It just worked out really well for me.
Did you feel like you could step down and go home whenever you wanted? Or did you feel a drive to keep going, or what was your mindset in terms of just quitting?
I was worried about the former, but felt like the latter. Because you have these things. I mean, it's I'm admitting that I was scared, and so nobody wants to. I don't really like admitting that. I just want to share what it was really like. It wasn't like I was terrified, but I mean, I'm scared because I know how dangerous this is and how you can make a mistake and bad things happen. I didn't want that to happen. I decided I wanted to come home and see my family, see my friends.
Yeah.
But I wasn't. But I just. It wasn't like I wasn't going to quit. I just felt I was okay and in a zone where I was in control and doing things, and I hadn't made any mistakes. So that gave me a lot of confidence to get up there. But as an example. So when we came down, our last rotation, the time we went up through the ice fall and came down through the ice fall was 10 days. So that's a really long gap. And we couldn't believe it. The ice fall had changed so much. There was one section that looked like a sculpture garden, like all this jade the ice was greenish and it was all sculpted and curved. And that whole thing was reduced to a whole series of blocks all crashed down. Like a big, huge area.
Wow.
So, and then the ropes were all different and crevasses had opened up and new ladders were there. So this thing is moving all the time, and I was a little nervous thinking, I've climbed Mount Everest, I'm going through the ice fall because I went twice in 2019, the 8th time, the last time probably. Let's just get through this, okay, and get on with our life.
Right. All right, so lightning round. Which is harder, surgery or climbing Everest?
Climbing Everest.
Physical therapy or climbing Everest?
Climbing Everest.
Raising kids or climbing Everest?
Raising kids. Yeah. More rewarding, though.
Document litigation or climbing Everest?
Yeah. I think that the litigation, the documentation might be harder. I don't know. Over 35 years, I think it is.
Very nice. Do you have an I climbed Everest bumper sticker?
I don't. Do I need one of those?
I think you should get one. That's
I have
cool.
an I climbed Mount Everest hat that somebody gave me. However,
nice. I think that counts. Very nice.
Well, thank you so much for being here. Is there anything that we didn't ask that you want to mention?
No, I think we've covered it. It's a big thing. It was a big adventure for me. I'm delighted to be able to be here with you and to share some of the stories. So it's been a great trip. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I'm going to add this because Art said he is so grateful for the care he received from his orthopedic surgeon, Mark Bowen, his primary care doctor, Pat Logan, other North Shore team members at the Orthopaedic and Spine Institute, and Jeff Fender, who is retired now, but oversaw the anesthesiologist who treated him during his operations. And Dr. Fender was a critical source of referrals to specialists for Art and many other patients. So we want to thank Art for being here, and it was so great to hear his story, and we'll see you next time. I don't know if we could top this one, but we will.
Thanks for listening.
Get it? Top this one?
Oh. I didn't get that.